Well, hello. Welcome to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand in for Todd, who is continuing to enjoy some vacation. Happy snow day for some. I have to say, waking up to canceled classes was a bit of a shocker to me this morning. I get it. Bad roads, or the possibility of bad roads, is the reason behind it. And I assume out of an abundance of caution, as they say. The shocker to me is how late in the year it has happened. Now, I suppose we've been spoiled with early springs as of late, and it's been a long while since we've seen something like this late in November. It's also been a while since I have enjoyed a snow day. I know they can be a pain in the neck for parents. Talking to a number of parents today, one in the elevator who said that when school cancels, then children's daycare cancels, and it creates a bit of a pain in the neck. But wouldn't it be nice, just once, that we could have an adult snow day? Wouldn't it? As you well know, we here at the radio station, driving in the morning, most of the time through bad weather, to tell you all to stay home. So it's been a minute since Vanessa and Vanessa Fernandez is behind the glass again this morning, doing a fantastic job, have enjoyed ourselves a snow day. And not to mention, Vanessa has kids and all that stuff that she has to deal with on top of all this stuff. So I get it. I understand the need for safety, but I'm curious as to what you think. If we perhaps are a little too quick to pull the trigger on these things. Anyway, it might be something you want to talk about during the open hour today, which, of course, goes in hour number 2. Gas prices are down again this morning. Again, a shocker. I did hear yesterday that the interrupter clause was to be used at midnight, but after our call-in yesterday in the open hour and hearing from you through emails and various other sources, I was expecting to see a much larger drop than we saw last night. I checked this morning on, I think it was GasBuddy.com. I think we had somebody from GasBuddy.com on the show last week to talk a little bit about oil prices and all the tariffs and those kind of things. But I checked their site this morning to get an idea what was going on around the rest of the country. And I was kind of upset when I did. Checked in on Toronto this morning. Their gas prices are in the $1.10 to $1.20 range. They, of course, don't have regulation in Ontario. New Brunswick this morning, $1.36. Manitoba, $1.16. Here in Halifax, $1.43.1. Also some prices in Newfoundland at $1.51. And prices in British Columbia, which are traditionally higher. Now, the website didn't give me good data from Vancouver, from the urban areas, but along the Okanagan Valley, prices there were about $1.33. So we have some of the most expensive gasoline prices in the country. The optimist in me says, well, maybe more relief on Friday when the Energy Board, I have to find the UARB used to just kind of slip off the tongue, right? It was for years and years and years. Now it's the Nova Scotia Energy Board. So anyway, the regulator will make its adjustment on Friday, if not before. We'll keep our eye on that. Wild swings on the markets continue today. Oh, my goodness. Yesterday, we saw one of the, if not the biggest swing in Dow Jones history, from multiple points down to over 800 up and then back down, and then it stayed down below the red numbers. The same somewhat today, and I'm still very confused about pre-market trading and how that all works. But that being said, when I was preparing for the show this morning, when I got in here after getting the stuff up onto the website for the snow day, I started looking at the markets, and when I first checked them this morning, they were like $700 to the green, or 700 points to the green, I guess. And that was pretty good. And then about an hour later, that disappeared. And now the Dow Jones is about 350 points in arrears. The S&P 500 about 11 points down, and the NASDAQ is up, but not by a whole lot, by about 15 points. We'll keep an eye on the markets today. Not good for you. Time for you if you have any money in the markets, that's for sure. I don't own any cryptocurrency, but I know people who do, and I've had conversations since last Wednesday or so about about crypto. Not entirely totally is up to speed on how it all works, but these people are, and they've invested in it for some time. And I asked them how their crypto was doing during all of this crazy that is the stock market these days, and I got that look, right? Just that look, that look. I think we can term that the market face now. Anyway, cryptocurrency is also getting hit as far as I can tell, and it looks like today's going to be another day. The Mooseheads, my goodness, a tough one for Halifax last night, losing 6-0 in Drummondville. But because of that, we get the best words in sports, and that is Game 7. And that goes tonight at 8 o'clock. You can catch all the action live right here on 95.7 News Radio. We're going to connect up a little bit later in this hour with Garreth MacDonald, who's going to help us tee up tonight's contest, take a look at last night, what went wrong, and dig out that book of cliches again, because it is the ultimate game, right? Game 7. It's what people grow up on the street. Do they still play street hockey? Anyway, grow up on the street or in the basements on the knee hockeys or the small stick hockey and dream of scoring that game-winning goal on a Game 7. So we'll get that tonight. You'll hear that right here on the radio station. HRM Council, by the way, is, before we get to our next guest, is meeting today to approve the municipal budget. So the budget committee will meet, as I understand it, unless there's a last-minute change. There will be a 0% increase in the tax rates, but because of a rise in assessments, it's going to work out to about 4.7%. So on the average home, and I don't even know what's average anymore, but on the average home, the increase is going to be about $117 over last year. So lots going on out there, lots to talk about. I'm glad you're spending some time with us here on the Todd Veinotte Show. I came across this story yesterday, and we're very pleased to bring it into the show today to talk about. And it's something that I know we've touched on. It makes the news every once in a while, but I don't think I've seen numbers quite like this before. And it's a look at abuse of elderly people within for-profit nursing homes. Did you know that in all Nova Scotia, comparing all Nova Scotia nursing homes with more than 100 beds, abuse rates in for-profit nursing homes, that's the commercial ones, is approaching twice as high as not for-profit or publicly owned nursing homes. It's kind of a shocking statistic. Very pleased to welcome into the show today to put a little context on that for us, a couple of people that we reach out to on these are, and one of them, of course, from the Advocates for the Care of the Elderly. That's Gary MacLeod. Gary, how are you?
Not too bad, Todd. Dan, sorry about that.
It's all good. He's better looking than I am.
Yeah. Good morning to you, and thank you for doing this story, Dan, because it's really important. And with all the things that are going on in the news these days, it kind of gets buried. And it's a very important subject to be talking about, the abuse of the elderly. It never goes away, and we really appreciate you doing the story.
Also on the line to give us a little context on this story, Protection of Persons in Care Review Committee Chair, a subcommittee of the ACE team, that's Carol McComber. Carol, how are you?
Hey, great. Thank you for having us.
I guess we'll start with you, Gary. I mentioned in the preamble that the numbers of this kind of jumped off the page with me when I started to read through the study that you all have done on the numbers and the level of abuse within privately or for-profit nursing homes in Nova Scotia. I guess the broad question to kind of start things off: were you surprised, or is this just back up what you've been hearing from within the community?
Well, it's not totally a surprise, but it was a bit of a surprise to me because Carol actually did the research, and when she got the hard numbers, it really hit me hard because with for profits, the bottom line is always the dollar. Not for profit, they tend to have more staff and that kind of thing. So, but it's really good to have the numbers, and thanks to Carol that she did this research because now we have factual numbers to go by.
Carol, how did you go about getting this data? Did you go and interview people at the homes, or was this publicly available? How did you come up with these numbers?
It's publicly available, but it's deeply buried, and it's in two different places. So I had to create spreadsheets of nursing homes with over 100 beds so that I was comparing apples to apples. So then I broke it out to private for-profit with over 100 beds, and then not-for-profit with over 100 beds, and then go to the abuse data and put that together year by year. And I was prompted to do it because my own mother was badly abused in a for-profit nursing home, and I saw that when I started looking into it, all of the media reports I was digging out were all in for-profit nursing homes. So I thought, what's going on here?
Right.
And I realized that it's an issue all over the world and in Canada, and Nova Scotia is no different.
Was it a specific company? Was it all of them? Were all of the for-profits showing up in that data?
There's only two for-profits with facilities that have over 100 beds in Nova Scotia, and they're Shanax and GBM Health.
Mm-hmm. And
yes, there were all of the high abusers were in those two.
Gary, Ace obviously has studied this and dug into these, and you've made a series of recommendations. What are sort of the top line that you got out of this and that you would like to see change?
Well, what we'd like to see is to have the government instruct protection of persons in care to conduct a review. The protection for people and care department, they do the licensing and they do the inspections for the nursing homes, and they should know these facts, and it's incumbent on them to do this, to make sure that the people in these facilities are protected. And the other thing is that Minister Adams convened a meeting of long-term care stakeholders to review the current and future ideal makeup of long-term care providers. I don't think that there's enough in the way of communication with these facilities to really have a great oversight to make sure that they have enough staff and people are being protected in the way that they should, and have the quality of care that's due to them. The rate of reliance on the for profit and long-term care, they're leaning towards more for profit, and we'd like to see if they're going to do that they follow how they do things in not-for-profits. I mean, none of it's perfect, okay? So, but what we want to see is zero tolerance for neglect and abuse in these homes. There are too many stories coming our way that have loved ones that have been neglected and abused in these homes, and we just want to see the zero tolerance for this, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know if it's possible, but the numbers that Carol has researched are much too high.
Gary, we're almost out of time. Bottom line, would it behoove the government to perhaps take a look at the way that we provide long-term care and maybe move closer to a non-for-profit model rather than relying on the private sector?
Well, Dan, in the past, the governments actually ran some of these nursing homes, and they got out of the business, and that was something that the ACE team has long been disappointed in. They provided good care, and they were accountable. But with the way it is now, it's an autonomous system, and we just need to have more oversight in these facilities so that we can get better care.
Gary, if somebody wants to dig into these numbers and look for themselves, are they available on your website?
Well, Carol has posted them on the website, and I think that If they're not there now, I haven't actually looked at it this morning, but they should be there.
Very good. Gary, I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you, Dan.
Carol, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having us. Greatly appreciated.
That is Gary MacLeod from the ACE team. Carol McComber from the ACE team, looking at elderly abuse in for-profit and non-for-profit health, long-term care. We're going to stop down, take our first break here on the Todd Veinotte Show this morning. When we come back, we're going to dig a little deeper into lobster tariffs, the impact on the industry as we are now a week or so into these, and some of the world pressures that are going on out there with other tariffs. What does that mean for seafood in our part of the world? You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. Back in minutes. Well, welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. Hope you're having a fantastic day and are staying safe if you're out on those roads. They're a little greasy this morning, so I drive with caution as they speak. It's a bit of a white mess out there right now. Although from my experience and from what I'm hearing from people driving in, it's the roads aren't too bad. It's the on ramps and the side streets and stuff that are a little bit greasy. It's just sloppy and wet, but the snow continues to fall. So just be mindful. Give yourself a little bit extra time. That means you can listen to the Todd Veinotte Show just that much longer, which makes everybody's day, doesn't it? We've been talking an awful lot about world economies and the tariffs that were imposed last week on everywhere in the world, with the exception of Canada and Mexico and Russia and North Korea, oddly enough. And that Canada is sort of not immune to all of the tariffs. I shouldn't say that, but no new tariffs added as part of President Trump's, and I put quotations around this again, Liberation Day. So I think the small nugget, and our next guest will tell me if I'm right or wrong on this, the small nugget is that the lobster industry in Canada didn't see any additional tariffs put on last week with the U.S. tariffing pretty much the rest of the world. But the industry still impacted, of course, by the Chinese tariffs. And I would imagine that as these tariffs on different countries and different supply chains start to work their way into the system and then down to the end user, that lobster fishermen will be noticing a bit of a change there too. Very pleased to welcome to the program to put some perspective on all this for us, from the Lobster Council of Canada, Geoff Irvine. Geoff, am I right?
Good morning, Dan. You're right that we were relieved last week about the U.S. announcement or non-announcement, but we still have the Chinese tariffs, and we still have the sort of threat hanging over us, the uncertainty from the U.S. But we were pleased with the announcement last week.
I guess let's start with the Chinese tariffs, because those are the ones that I think that are probably having the biggest impact, at least right now. Has it changed anything on the water? I mean, we heard from the Premier when he was down in Boston a couple of weeks ago saying, the seafood's going to get caught, it's going to get sold. Is it, or will it have an immediate impact on the actual operations out there?
Well, the short answer is we don't know yet. It happens to be the time of year when there's very little lobster fishing because the winter is ending. There's very little inventory because processors shipped their finished goods into the U.S. before the tariffs were going to come on, and live shippers sent all their live lobster to China before March 20th. So we're entering the spring season with a good inventory position, very little inventory, but lots to come. So we don't know yet what it's going to mean. We're worried about the sort of macroeconomic impacts of all the other tariffs, recessions and economic downturns are when people don't eat premium protein typically as much as they used to. But the short answer is we don't really know yet.
You mentioned capacity. I know, and I'm going to use probably a bad analogy here, but west when grain prices were down, the farmers would kind of sit on their grain stores. I know that lobster is obviously a live product, but does that give you a little bit of flexibility now that you have this inventory space available for lobsters when the seasons fire back up?
Well, I think a key thing for your listeners to remember is that our export value of lobster is about 55% frozen processed lobster and only 45% live. So the processors put up lobster tails and meat and whole in shell in the spring and the fall, and they sell it through the rest of the year, and that's frozen. So that product can be held, but the challenge the processors have is financing, which is very expensive. So they try to move it through relatively quickly. On the live side, we also can store live lobster for months and months and months, in very good quality. So we have some flexibility there. And much of the live lobster comes from Nova Scotia, where the processing is generally centered in New Brunswick, PEI. The live lobster sector is Nova Scotia, and the live lobster sector is most exposed to China. So there's a lot in there, but we're in a good place in terms of inventory at the moment, but that will change within a very few short weeks.
Seems this industry just keeps getting, kicked while it's down, right? We start to get a little bit of a recovery, then we have, supply chain to gas, diesel prices go up, the COVID hits, all of that stuff, and then we start to recover again, and then now it's just another kick while you're down. What's the feeling amongst producers, the people that are on the water? Are they like enough is enough already?
Well, the industry is made up of two sectors: the harvesters who catch the lobster, and the shoreside sector that takes it to market. The harvesters in general have had some okay years. Really, since 2012, the last big downturn, it's been getting better generally year over year, with some caveats because the lobster is changing where we're catching them. The shoreside sector alternates between half-decent years and poor years, depending on a lot of different factors. So it depends on who you're talking to. But in general, the industry's been okay for the last few years. This is just another challenge that we'll have to meet, but we've met them before.
You mentioned sort of the microeconomics or macroeconomics that are unfolding. Is it still too early to say? I mean, we're seeing an escalation between the Americans and Chinese in their trade war. The European Union's planning to countervail, and if President Trump lives up to his threats, that's going to escalate. Is this perhaps in a kind of a weird and sort of backdoor way going to create some opportunity for the Lobster Council and lobster producers and harvesters to find other markets that they normally wouldn't have considered in the past?
Well, that's the silver lining, Dan, and I mean, every year we go out on missions to try to sell more lobster to different places in Asia and in Europe. This sort of shock will give us more impetus, more money from governments, from ourselves, to invest in developing new markets. So that's a good thing. We know we need to do that. It's just challenging, and it's been so relatively easy to sell most of our production south of the border. But no, it's a good kick in the butt that we probably need. The key will be to maintain it. If things stay the way they are, we may just drop back into our typical way of doing business. But I think this has really given us the push that we need to diversify more. And we know that other markets want our products. It's just that we've been focused on the U.S. for so long that we haven't focused on those other markets. But they are out there, and we will definitely sell more lobster to other markets this year. Is
it make it prohibitive on distance? I mean, we're already shipping to China, right? So it can't be that much difference to other places in the world.
No, I mean, the world's a small place. You can get anywhere by air, and if it's frozen, it's in a frozen reefer container. So, I mean, we went to the Philippines, for example, last year, and that has resulted in products moving to the Philippines, frozen products mostly. Middle East is opening up. There's more opportunity in China. There's more opportunity in Europe. But as I said, it's a bit of it is a mentality shift for our shippers and processors to remember that those markets are there, and now that they need to remember because of tariffs or tariff threats, they will take those opportunities.
How about domestically, Geoff? And the reason why I asked that question is I was having a conversation yesterday with somebody here at the radio station who is their normal Mother's Day routine is to get some fresh or to get some lobsters and have a lobster feast to kind of welcome spring and say thanks to Mom. Are prices at the grocery stores here going to be impacted by all of this?
Well, it all depends on what happens in the next few weeks going into May. If we have a very high catch, which we expect, and we have these sort of trade issues with our two biggest customers, we can predict that there'll be some reasonable prices out there. So yes, the Mother's Day, Father's Day, Canadian domestic market should be good. But there's so many factors. There's weather. There's all kinds of things that can impact the spring catch. and it's our job to push up the prices. So we never want to talk about lower prices, even though that's what domestic consumers want to see. But it's our job to get the very best prices and returns for the shoreside sector and the harvesters.
Geoff, as always, a pleasure, sir.
All right, Dan, thank you so much.
That is Geoff Irvine with the Lobster Council of Canada, keeping a very close eye on what's going on globally, not only with the Chinese tariffs, but all of the ramifications of Liberation Day and the fact that there's a lot of countries right now that are talking about their economies retracting, or that evil word recession. We're going to stop down. We're going to take another break. Blake is going to update us on what's going on in the world. And when we come back, get out your cliche book. Garreth MacDonald, our play-by-play announcer for the Halifax Mooseheads, will join us. The Moose losing last night. Game 7 tonight. All of the cards on the table. Backs against the wall. 110%. Garreth always gives us 110%, and he's going to join us right after the news. Trying to think of a proper sport analogy to describe what has been going on the world markets. In the preamble to our show 34 minutes ago, I said that we saw some gains in the overnight trade, and then we lost all the gains in the overnight trade, and then the markets opened, and holy smokes, they're up significantly this morning. All the world markets are up. The Dow up 3%, the S&P up 3%. TSX is, of course, just starting to catch up, so we don't have any real numbers on them yet. But London's up 3%, Tokyo's up 3%. So I don't know what's driving it, but it feels like that's a third period come from behind victory, to use a hockey analogy, which is appropriate considering that our next guest is resting up his pipes, except to talk to us on the phone, of course, and that is Garreth MacDonald, who will call the best game of any playoff series in all of sports, and that is Game 7. Garreth, it doesn't get any better than that.
Oh, I thought you were bringing me on to talk about the NASDAQ, Dan.
Well, Garreth, he's multi-talented, right? And with the way that these things are changing so quickly, it feels like you need play-by-play.
I guess so. Yeah, no, I guess so. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, all joking aside, no, it's going to be an exciting night here in Drummondville. The two best words in sports, Dan. Let's bring in some more cliches. Right. Game 7, you got to love it.
Game 7, the Moose with an opportunity last night to end the series. They didn't, and it was a bit of a lopsided victory for Drummondville on the ice last night.
It was, yeah. It was kind of an anomaly, I guess, not just in this first-round playoff matchup, but in the regular season series as well. All the games between these two teams all year long, despite the differential in the standings throughout the regular season, the Moose have hung right there all season long with the best team from the Western Conference. But, yeah, last night, you could tell. Drummondville came back. They came back home. Their backs were against the wall. This is a team, we got to remember, that finished 38 points up on the Mooseheads, a team that won the league championship last year. They were Jill Courteau Trophy champions. And, yeah, I think with their backs against the wall on home ice, they fed off the crowd early. They had an unbelievable start. I think you'd expect this much. You'd expect a hot start on home ice, and that's exactly what they got last night. They came out of the blocks just blazing, and they got an early goal just about 90 seconds in. And, if anything, I think the Mooseheads were pretty fortunate to come out of the first period only down 1-0. Jacob Steinman, as he has throughout not just this playoff round, but throughout his tenure now with the Mooseheads since arriving from Moncton back in January 6th, he did everything he could to keep them in the game, try to give them a chance to win. It was still a fairly tight game midway through the second period, but Drummondville, they kind of smelled a little blood there. The Moose got themselves in a little bit of penalty trouble, and I'd say in that second period in particular, the momentum definitely shifted in their favor. You could feel it slipping away from the Mooseheads. They just couldn't recover, and yeah, it was a tough night. It was a tough night, but at the same time, we've seen throughout the year, certainly throughout the playoffs, that the Moose are despite being the youngest team in the league and youngest team in many decades in the Q, this is a pretty resilient young team. They're a resilient bunch. They're dealing with a lot of injuries right now, but I think at the same time, they're a group that can hit the reset button. And you have to. There's no tomorrow, to bring in another cliche.
We're going down the list. Steinman was pulled in the third last night. Was that just a load management thing, trying to get him a little extra rest in anticipation of tonight's game?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those goals last night that found their way past him, you couldn't lay any on him for the most part. I mean, he was fantastic. The ones that beat him, they were just grade A's, where he really didn't have much of a chance on them. And as we said, I mean, you probably could have made the case that you might have even been able to get him out of the game a little bit earlier. But as we said as well, he's found a way to kind of keep the Mooseheads in these games since he arrived here back in January. And yeah, I mean, at that point, I think that was the fifth goal that beat him. You got to get him out of there. It was obvious that there was no coming back in that game. So get him out, try to get him a little bit of rest there, let him hit the reset button as well, and get focused on Game 7.
Gareth, is it better that Game 7's tonight immediately after that loss last night? There's not a lot of time to sort of sit back and dwell on it and let things get into your head? Is it better to just, okay, we're done, let's just focus on Game 7 and get into our pregame ritual early?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the time I would say that would be the case, but at the same time right now, again, young team, this group, I think for the Drummondville side as well. I mean, you can tell this is the playoffs. This has been a physical series, certainly in Drummondville, in the smaller rink here at Marcel Dion Center. There's not a lot of room out there, so there has been a whole lot of physicality. I don't think there's too many guys right now in that Mooseheads dressing room that aren't walking around without ice bags. They blocked a lot of shots. It's been a real physical series. I think there's a lot of battle wounds at this point. So an extra day might not be the worst thing for the Mooseheads to give them a little bit of rest and maybe heal up a bit for a Game 7. Again, that extra day wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. But again, at the same time, I guess it's they don't have to dwell on a lopsided loss last night either. They can try to get back at it here tonight, and that's what they got to do.
Gareth, keys tonight. You mentioned a couple of things that maybe went a little bit sideways last night. Getting into penalty trouble, getting down early. What's the key tonight for the Mooseheads to be successful?
Yeah, they'll certainly want to stay disciplined. I mean, Drummondville's just got too many weapons in the lineup. They're big boys. I mean, what can you say about Bridgewater's Luke Woodworth, the captain of the Volts? He's just been incredible in this series. I think he's got 13 points now in the 6 games so far. He's leading the Q in playoff scoring, and he's got his line mate Ethan Gauthier right there with him as well. Those two have just been so dynamic. They carried the offensive workload throughout the season. They were so key last year on that Gilles Courteau Trophy run, and they've obviously been great again here in this first round. So, you don't want to give them any extra looks on the power play. Discipline will be huge. They'll need a big performance from Jacob Steinman, who, again, I'll say it one more time. He's just been remarkable since coming over from Moncton, and they'll need another world-class performance from him here tonight. And that first goal, I think, will be massive this evening. Again, the Moose gave up one just about 90 seconds in. I think they've only got the first goal in the series in one game so far. They've spent a lot of time here playing from behind, so that first goal will be huge. It would be nice to try to keep the crowd out of it early. We know they'll be pretty raucous, but I think at the end of the day, the biggest thing will just be playing a simple game here tonight. They gotta play fast, north, simple. Those are a lot of the things we've heard from the coaching staff throughout the year. They'll have to defend hard, and it's just chipping pucks in, not messing around with it. You can't give up any turnovers that it neutralize. You don't want an odd man rush coming back the other way with some of those big weapons that Drummondville's got. So a nice, tidy defensive, hard-working game. It's got to be the hardest-working, simplest game of the year here tonight if the Moose want to punch their ticket, and we'll see how it all shakes out.
You mentioned ice bags. Any significant injuries? Are we expecting any lineup changes tonight?
I mean, right now, we've seen it throughout the series. Back in game one, the Moose lost a couple of key rookies who were playing some big time roles. Justin Shearis and Will Bent. I mean, they were fantastic during their first few months with the Mooseheads, joining the team after the holiday break. They won't be in the lineup. Kalen Blake, another promising young rookie, second round pick. He piled up a lot of points coming down the stretch, scored a massive goal back in game one to tie the game up before Quinn Kennedy scored the game winner. He got banged up in game five, so he's not here. That's it. That's a major piece not available. But after that, I think it's some of those little battle wounds that come along with a physical playoff round, and again, the Moose will have to show some mental toughness here tonight. But like we said, I don't think there's any guy on either bench right now feeling 100%, and that's just playoff hockey.
Garreth, we're looking forward to it. Puck drops at 8:00 Atlantic time tonight. And if you're a hockey fan, you just cannot miss it. As you mentioned, the two best words in sports, Game 7.
Yeah, can't wait. It should be a lot of fun here tonight. I've had an opportunity, I think, to call. We called one Game 7, I think, back in 2019, first round series against the Quebec Ramparts, and the atmosphere at the Scotiabank Center was unreal for that one. Called a Game 5 in 2022. That was when during the pandemic year, right, where they kind of went to that best of 5 format. But that was a lot of fun against Bathurst as well. And yeah, can't wait for this one here tonight. It should be a lot of fun.
Well, rest up those pipes, Garreth, and we're looking forward to listening to you tonight right here at 95.7 News Radio.
Absolutely. Can't wait, Dan.
Man, appreciate it.
Take care.
That is Garreth MacDonald, our play-by-play announcer right here. Again, don't forget, it's a Quebec start, so it's an 8 p.m. start. You'll catch it live right here. You won't miss a minute of the action. 95.7 News Radio. Garreth always does an outstanding job, and Game 7s are that much more fun. We're going to stop. We're going to take another break here on the show, and when we come back, why aging Canadians in Halifax need to be a federal election priority. The CEO of the National Association of Federal Retirees, Anthony Pizzino, will be joining us. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. Back in minutes. Welcome back. The federal election campaign continues as I think we're almost halfway, if not already there. And the party leaders, of course, are fanned out across the country as they try and convince some undecided voters. Some new data I saw yesterday showing, I think it was Angus Reid that put it out, showing that the Liberals are maintaining their lead over the Conservatives. Some polls had suggested there was some, and it wasn't much, but there was some narrowing of the margin between the two. Angus Reid said that I think in the battlegrounds, the big provinces in Ontario, I think the Liberals were at, and please don't quote me, but I think it's around 16 points, and I think it was similar. I think 11 or 12 points in Quebec, which of course are the two vote-rich provinces, and we know all of the problems with that. That being said, one of the numbers that kind of jumped out at me was that the number of people that have decided that they want to vote for the Liberals this time around and are steadfast in their opinion has gone up over the last month or so from, I think it was 43% to into the 60s now. So people are, and I imagine the Conservative vote is much the same. People are locking in their votes now, and it's just that battle for those few undecideds that the federal party leaders are working on. And I've been covering elections and have been in the news business, I think, for a long time, we'll say. And normally, seniors issues are right at the top of the agenda for the party leaders. Normally, when they first start their campaigns and on most of the hustings that they hit, the senior issues tend to dominate. And it's not just senior issues, but issues that are important to seniors, healthcare, those kind of things. We talked about long-term care a little bit earlier in the program today, and strategists have told me in the past that the reason why parties and campaigns focus on seniors issues in a normal year is because that seniors vote, and they vote in numbers, right? Because when you take a look at participation across the country in elections, the senior demographic tends to be much more represented at the polling station than other demographics. But this election is completely different. It's completely different this time around, and the reason why I say that is that the ballot box question, as you and I are speaking today and has been since the beginning of the election campaign and even before, is that of the ongoing, and I look struggling for a better way to describe it other than crazy with the United States and with Donald Trump and with tariffs and with threats of annexation, which I know have been sort of tampered at least a little bit. He hasn't mentioned it for a couple of weeks. And maybe those traditional issues are getting maybe a little less oxygen this time around. Came across a release earlier this week from our next guest, and that is the CEO of the National Association of Federal Retirees, and it's Anthony Pizzino. Anthony, how are you?
I'm very well, Dan. Thank you. How are you?
And good. The release saying something along the lines that the federal election party leaders should be focusing more on seniors issues, particularly here in Halifax, because we have a significant seniors population.
Absolutely. And thank you for sort of the initial background. Yes. One thing that we know for sure, it's not just about seniors and older Canadians. The Canadian population is aging. So it's very important for all parties to look forward and see how they can set up a plan to ensure good quality of life for everybody, and obviously for older Canadians, positive and healthy aging experiences. Yeah.
Do you think that these issues, like as I mentioned, that normally are quite prevalent in federal, particularly in federal election campaigns, are struggling to get any kind of attention, given the tariff situation and the ongoing affordability and housing issues?
Well, we're trying to make sure that they don't struggle with that.
Right.
We represent 170,000 members. That's a significant number of people across Canada in the federal public service, the armed forces, RCMP, and retired federally appointed judges. So, and that includes partners and survivors. So we've been doing this since 1963 and have been advocating for ensuring that there's better retirement income security and a strong, sustainable healthcare system. I heard you say you were talking about long-term care earlier. That is obviously another really, really important part of what we do. You also mentioned the population within the Halifax region. And absolutely, 17.3% of the population in Halifax are people aged 65 years and older. To any political party, that should be a significant number. That is a significant number of people that will get out and vote, and hopefully vote for the next government that will put in place measures to support seniors and aging Canadians.
What's your membership telling you they want to hear on those files? What are they looking for from each of the parties as they campaign across the country?
They want to know that there is a strong support for retirement income security that includes both support for pension plans, but other forms of retirement income like the Canada Pension Plan, old age security. They want standards on long-term care and home care, which federally are in place but not yet enacted. We saw what happened during, I don't want to go back to the COVID pandemic, but we saw what happened there in long-term care homes. And the situation needs to improve. We need strong enforceable standards from the next federal government to make sure that people can age in place where they choose, but if it's in a facility that actually provides them with the best care and dignity possible. We also advocate for, we don't talk a lot about, we do talk somewhat about the military and military spending. We have a commitment to support those individuals and retired members of the Canadian military as they transition out of service during retirement. That includes supporting them for more equitable outcomes, basically at every stage of service, but also on retirement. So retirement income, long-term care and home care, and support for veterans. That's really the three main areas that we want the next federal government to pay more attention to.
In discussions with the members that you represent, are the ballot box, the main ballot box question, the tariffs, the sovereignty thing, is that weighing into any of the discussions, or are your members mainly focused on what you just listed for us?
Well, the concern that we've heard from members, yes, the ongoing trade war is critical. It's important for them, but so is the rising cost of living.
Right.
And what folks are telling us is they want the next government to take action to ensure financial security, access to affordable housing, and infrastructure that supports healthy aging as really important ballot box questions.
Anthony, we're out of time. I appreciate yours, sir.
I thank you so much, Dan. Have a great day.
That is Anthony Pizzino. He is the CEO of the National Association of Federal Retirees. Just very quickly before we hand over the reins to Blake to update us on what's going on in the news, police advising motorists to adjust their driving in light of today's snowfall and to be mindful of changing road conditions throughout the day. This release from HRP. Road conditions often warrant significantly slower speeds than posted. Remember to allow extra time for your commute so you don't feel that you have to rush. Most roads are slippery. Vehicle stopping distance increases to allow extra space between you and the road user ahead. When approaching that red light or stop sign, begin stopping earlier. Before you head out, clear off your vehicle. I can't tell you how many of those I saw today. You know what? Yeah, the giveaway for that is the arm swipe down the windows on the side. You can see the person's arm imprinted in the snow. Take the 30 seconds and get the snow off. Anyway, HRP warning you to take it easy out there. Give yourself extra time. It's winter driving conditions, folks. It doesn't matter what the day is on the calendar. It's road conditions like we'd see in January and April. Maritime weather, right? Going to open up the phone lines. 902-405-6000 is the number. 902-405-6000. The open hour is coming up right after the news.
X.
All right, welcome back. This is the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand in for Todd, who is off for the rest of the week, and we'll be back in the big chair on Monday morning, and I know that he's going to have a lot to say, because that's just what Todd does. Anyway, looking forward to his return, I can tell you that much, but I am having lots of fun, and this is my favorite hour of the day. It is the open hour. The telephone lines are open, 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. A chance to talk about whatever it is on your mind. The markets, again, are doing what the markets have been doing the last 3 days. They're down, they're up, they're down, they're up. They're up now, up significantly. Is this impacting your life? It certainly is impacting mine. It's amazing how just in the last several weeks, my morning routine has changed, right? It used to be, and will very soon, and I don't even want to bring this up, but normally once we get past the winter and into spring and summer, then our eyes start to turn, at least mine do, to the Atlantic Basin when it comes to storms and those kind of things. So normally my very first look in the morning is a glance at the Hurricane Center to see what's happening out there, and then on to the news of the day. But now it's, as of late, the last 3 or 4 days, it's been, let's check the pre-market trade and check the markets. And then, then we check to see what President Trump has had to say, and then we go on to the news of the day. So it's amazing how things change. Are you watching the markets? Are you just? I mean, the short term advice I would imagine would be to hold and just try and wait this out. But it's when your retirement savings like mine has taken such a significant whack, for lack of a better term, it's tough not to get a little panicky, right? So I'm curious your thoughts on that. Also, if you heard the news yesterday, Tim Houston is still riding high in the polls. He's got a 50% approval rating of the way he's handling things in Nova Scotia. That's outstanding. If there was an election right now, right here in Nova Scotia, and let's hope there won't be for another 4 years, but if there was today, 56% say they would vote PC. This from Abacus data. My question to you is, are you happy with the way Tim Houston is governing Nova Scotia thus far? And also, I dislike criticizing a decision based on safety and the fact that I have no children in the school system. that all being said, I was at our local Tim's this morning on my way to work, and in the lobby of the building here and in the radio station, lots of chatter about HRCE this morning and their decision to cancel school. Now, again, I don't like criticizing their decision. It's their decision, and to err on the side of caution when it comes to children is probably a smart thing. That being said, based on the conversations I had this morning, this creates quite a bit of a headache, a pain in the neck for parents, right? As I understand it, talking to somebody in the elevator, when school cancels, daycare cancels, at least his daycare canceled, and then now we've got childcare issues. Parents have to scramble to try and find somebody to look after their kids. Maybe they have to take the day off. Maybe they have to work from home when these decisions are made. And I think it's a fair question, and I'm not taking a side either yay or nay, but I think it's a fair question to ask. Do you think that this was a decision that HRCE got right or wrong? 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. Or anything else you want to talk about. That's the beauty of the open hour. And we begin this morning with Jim. Jim, how are you?
I'm good, Dan. Glad to hear you standing in there. But I couldn't get on yesterday. At the very end, you had two callers talk to Crown Corporation and their opinions around that not being the route to go. And
with the housing, the liberal housing plan of creating, I understand where you're going now.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. 1979, I got a job with the Department of Environment, and my first task was to work with a Crown Corporation Nova Scotia Housing Commission. And basically, we looked at coordinated approvals for building all kinds of housing, which people recognize today as Forest Hills and Lower Sackville.
Okay.
That was a very successful Crown Corporation. That work could not have been done by the private sector because the houses were in the price point that we need right now for modest income families to get going.
Sure. Now,
other companies like Clayton Developments built both Colby Village and at the point they're working at Sheffield Park and those places. They were building a different scale of house, but trust me, that Crown Corporation was the way to do it in those days. And we can speculate that these Crown Corporations won't be functional, but that wasn't the case. And also, too, for the rest of my career, I worked across all kinds of variety of mostly engineering industries. But the federal government itself, if you look at Defence Construction Canada, they manage multi-$100 million projects, hangars, docks, wharves. And I can tell you, when you deal with those particular bureaucrats, they are very, very, very good at getting the best bang of the buck for the taxpayer.
That being said, and Jim, and I understand that, and I'm glad you called because I have questions, as I always do. When you're dealing with tenants, when you're dealing with people that are going to be the users of these homes or so on and so forth, it's different than building a hangar, right? Because the hangar is going to have a tenant. Maybe that changes, once every 5 years or whatever. Whereas tenants are going to be an ongoing process, and there's usually significant red tape when dealing with the government. Was that your experience?
Well, it's it's an infrastructure project. What the federal government's going to do is going to provide, impetus for storm water, egress, street design, civil engineering.
Right.
Things like environmental protection. These things are going to have to go through it, and there's going to have to be First Nations consultation too on some of these big properties of land, right?
Sure.
So when you get down to the tenant level, Forest Hills and Lower Sackville, there's thousands and thousands of houses, hundreds of strips, right? And basically, individuals were able to buy those houses. Mm-hmm. And then that was the other thing. They talked about these SIP panels, structurally insulated panels, for putting houses together. I've been looking at that. It's just such a great idea.
Yeah.
To actually build a house in a warehouse, completely state-of-the-art insulated, and put it on site. So at the end of the day, I respect the two chaps that called in, but at the end of the day, just because it's a Crown Corporation doesn't mean that it's going to be defective. I did a pile of work in my career for Canada Post, and the real property people, the people that own the properties, and I can tell you they were the most efficient group of property managers that I ever worked with, and they saved the public hundreds of millions of dollars. And I'm not kidding about that, right? We did oil tank replacements at every post office across Canada. That if they had leaked, and lots of tanks leaked, it would have been horrendously expensive, and a lot of contamination in small communities and so on. And that department had 5 people in it. So, at the end of the day, don't just repeat what your friends are talking about. Look around and look at the history. I think Nova Scotia Housing Commission was outstanding in the way the provincial government, it was John Buchanan at the time, set it up to have integrated approvals. They call it a joint certificate of approval. You look around, we say, okay, now we're approved. And you're going to need that if you're dealing with municipalities too, right? So, let's keep our eyes open, but right off the bat, let's not say Crown corporations. I mean, yes, of course, they can be dysfunctional, as it all comes down to the leadership, and that we have to monitor. But just to change topics for one more point, the snowy day today, I can remember one April a long time ago, my son called me and said he's not going to work. The roads are too bad in a summer job. And I said, no, you're going to work. And he flipped his car upside down and rolled down over a hill.
Ouch.
On a snowy day. I bet you it was today's date. So, the roads are bad today. Let's pay attention to it and listen to the people that know what they're doing.
Fair enough. Hey, Jim, I appreciate the perspective. Thank you very much for calling.
Thanks, Dan.
Have a great day, sir.
You too, thanks.
902-405-6000. It's 902-405-6000. Learn things every day when you listen to this program. We're going to stop, take a break. The open hour continues on the other side. There's a few lines open for you. Again, 902-405-6000. The open hour continues after the break.
Axe.
Welcome back. This is the Open Hour. I'm Dan Alstrand. There are a few lines open if you'd like to get on. 902-405-6000. That is the number. Let's go to the phones and welcome Joe to the show. Joe, how are you?
I'm not very well, Dan. How are you?
I'm sorry to hear that. What's wrong?
Well, I'm sorry to experience it, but I've been very reluctant, extremely reluctant to make this call. It's about the building that I live in, and the way it's not the way it's maintained, the way it's not maintained, it's becoming mildly now and becoming worse. It's becoming a horrible place to live, and rents have gone up exponentially. Maintenance has dropped off the radar screen. They hire people they hire the cheapest people they can get. And I don't want to have that mitigated by someone saying, well, that's good business. No, it's not when you treat your tenants like cattle or pets. And there's the management of this building is maybe they're unaware, which is very unprofessional and unacceptable, or they're just they're apathetic, incompetent, and are just ignorant. They just don't know what they're supposed to do. And it's reached a critical point for me. I woke up this morning with I characterized my stomach in the middle of my chest plate. And I reached a point that I can't not deal with this. I can't, it's unacceptable. I woke up yesterday to brown water coming out of my tap and in my bowl. I went to the washroom and looked in the bowl, and I thought, what in the hell? And the first question I have to ask you is, I could characterize very accurately and go on for an unacceptable amount of time telling you what I'm putting up with and what other tenants are putting up with, but you have a format to follow. And I was reluctant to call, and as I told Vanessa, I was going to call today, and then I canceled because I thought, well, I don't want to get 2 to 3 minutes. This can't be. No, I get it. This can't be. It's terrible. It's terrible. It's when I called management, one of the people I talked to said they were unaware of it. The problem is we don't have a live-in competent building superintendent, and we haven't had for a few years. They retired, and they claim they can't get anyone to come in and do the job. But the bottom line is the bottom line is the bottom line. They don't want to pay people, a decent person, to come in and do the job, and they don't want to pay them what they have to pay them. So they hire people that are unknowledgeable, inexperienced, and not even ill-trained, untrained. As long as they have a warm body with a pulse, they feel they're doing their responsibility by having someone like that in the chair in the office in the building. They weren't aware of the brown water. I went around and around through the day and finally talked to another one of the so-called property managers, and I was told that the problem was with Halifax Water, that there was a problem, a glitch in the system, and was left with that explanation. And I thought, this doesn't sound quite right to me. So I called Halifax Water, and I called 311. I called minimum standards, and I filed a complaint. I called someone that I know in minimum standards and spoke with them. I called Halifax Water, and the young lady was very helpful. I told her where I lived, and she said, no, there's no record of any kind of a break in the system in your area, especially. She said there was one. I won't give the address, but Sure. It was down the south end. Down the south end, probably I estimate at about 3 miles away. And she said that would have no effect on you. And I said, thank you. I told her what was going on, and she said, it sounds like a local issue. I said, I believe it is, because I had noticed a plumbing truck outside our front door here for several hours yesterday, as we have regularly, water problems. It turns out I was lied to. And when I called the second manager, he said that, well, it's an old building and you have to expect these kind of problems. And I thought, yeah, but I don't expect you to cheap out on maintenance, cut back on staff. At every possible turn, they're trying to save money. And the other day, yesterday, I reached a critical point. I got set up because the night before, this is Tuesday, on Sunday, tried to get in the elevator, and one elevator has been out of commission for over a week, which happens regularly. The other elevator wasn't working, so people were on the ground floor and couldn't get up to their apartments. And I'm senior. I'm in my late 70s, and I'm frankly just at my wit's end with these people. Just at my wit's end.
Joe, you're not the first person that's told me this kind of story. How long have you lived in that building?
I'm in my 13th year.
And has it changed hands? Has the property management company changed hands?
No.
No, so it's the same one. It's just that it's
there's a little bit of background there that
Sure.
I don't feel it would be appropriate.
Okay, no,
to
fair.
share.
That's fair enough. I get it. I don't want you to be uncomfortable. I'm just curious.
No, Todd. Dan, I'm uncomfortable being on the line talking about.
No,
this.
I get it.
I'm right up to my neck. I feel like I'm suffocating with the stupidity, apathy, and incompetence of this company. They're horrible, and they're one of the largest, if not the largest, one of the largest in Nova Scotia. And I've wondered so many times, how in the hell can they get away with this?
Right.
Well, they get away with it because we have such a high turnover of people in the building, a lot of newcomers. The people, the mainstay, the base of the people that live in the building, which is when I moved in, have gone. They've abandoned ship, and there's been an influx of new people. And of course, new people come in. They don't know their rights. They don't know what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. They're just struggling to get adjusted to their new living conditions. So there's not a lot of advocacy going on for them because they're not even aware of what the rights are. I've been here and I've been watching this unfold for over a decade. The change in management, the difficulty in keeping decent people, keeping people at all. People come here to work here and then they're gone. And they hire people who, some of them can barely, I better not make that statement. Some of them can barely function and communicate. They don't know what they're doing, but they can get them cheaply. So yesterday I talked to this manager, and I when I mentioned the elevator situation, he he brushed me off by saying, well, it's an older building. And I thought to myself, then if you know it's older and the conditions are unacceptably substandard, why do you keep raising your rents? And of course, the answer is they do it because they can.
Right.
And it's reached a critical point. I listed to one of the managers. I talked to two of them yesterday, and the latter one was very glib and arrogant about my call. I guess I'm seen as a problem, an unnecessary problem, and I can imagine he's rolling his eyes. I've dealt with him before, and his carelessness is obvious, his apathy is obvious, and his arrogance is even more obvious. But that's not why I called. I just, as I said, I was reluctant to even call, and I thought, well, maybe I can do this in stages because I don't want to hog the airwaves or plug up your lines.
Okay.
But something has got to be done. I don't, and I explained to the person that I know at Minimum Standards for HRM. He said, well, I can hear the frustration in your voice. I said, it's more than frustration. I'm feeling like defeated,
right.
Just totally defeated. The processes that are put in place for us to try to mitigate these problems are inefficient, ineffective, lethargic, too much red tape. They're just slow and lethargic. And I start hearing about who I can call, numbers I can call, check with this person. I'm thinking, this problem is immediate. When I'm standing in the lobby of my building and the elevators aren't working, I got out of the hospital last year and had to learn to walk again. And I pushed myself to the point where I can walk. So I took the stairs. But for people to be, and this isn't the first time this has happened. They were doing work a month, 2 months ago on the lobby and hammer and banging all day. They couldn't lock or close the security doors at night, and they would leave them open because the workmen couldn't pack everything up and then unpack it again in the morning. The front door was inaccessible, which forced us to come in the back door. And the elevators, one night I came in on a Friday night, and the elevators weren't working. So, and the list goes on. The list goes on. The services that are withdrawing regularly to save money, the staff that they're not hiring to keep the halls vacuumed and cleaned and in proper order is not happening. They have people that sort of, if you approach them, they're first-line management staff, and they sort of look at you apoplectically, as though they don't know what the hell to do, and it's getting worse. And I thought, I've got to do something. And I warned one of these managers, if you don't stop, I said to him, living here is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. And every day there's either lingering problems that haven't been addressed or 2 or 3 more that are added to it. Everything from vermin, cockroaches, bed bugs, feral ants, mice, parking that's inadequate because they're jamming way too many people into apartments that are too small. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment in the center of Halifax, and I had a family of 4 living above me in a 1-bedroom. And I was shocked when I realized that and found out. Anyway,
Jim?
I think
Jim, I appreciate you, Joe, I appreciate you sharing that with us, and maybe somebody out there can maybe give you a little bit of advice on what to do.
No, Dan, I've been through the protocol of the tenancy board, small claims court.
I get it.
Not with this building, and the building owners, and not the medium and the smaller building owners. Well, some of them may be guilty of
Joe,
it.
I really don't want to hang up, but I'm really up against the break. I appreciate you calling, and maybe you can call back tomorrow and we can carry on the conversation. Have a great day. Need to stop down for a break. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. Back in minutes. All right, welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. Dan Alstrand along with us, along with you, I guess. And just thinking about some of the things that Joe was talking about before the break, and it's not the first time that I've heard from long-term tenants that have lived in buildings for an extended period of time, more than 5 years or 6 years, that feel that the landlords and the building managers kind of have the cards, right? And for somebody like like I think Joe said that he lived in that building for 13 years. If he was to just say I'm done, he can't go out into the rental market and get what he has right now for what he's paying for that rent, and may not be able to afford the same apartment that he's in now, right? And I've heard from more than one person that has said that they're concerned that if they start to raise concerns with their and Joe certainly is the exact opposite of this, but have raised concerns about what's maintenance or their building upkeep or the building itself or whatever, and become and I'm going to put quotations around this a problem, then suddenly maybe the landlord looks at ways that they can that we've heard of the rent evictions, we've heard of those kind of things. I know that there's protections, but not there's ways around things, or they feel like they don't want to create any ripples because they're worried about losing their apartments, and that should never be what it is, right? It should never be. If it's a legit complaint, if it's something that is a safety issue, brown water in your pipes, security doors, that kind of thing, elevators, it should never be a concern for a tenant to go to a landlord and say, like, look, fix this, all right? Instead of it being, well, geez, if what happens if they turf us? Then what do we do, right? Because I mean, I've been in my apartment building for 12 or 13 years. I can't get a similar size apartment anywhere close, not even in the same ballpark, in the rental market right now that I'm currently paying. So it feels like it's there's a tilt towards the landlord. Landlords will tell you different, but that's what listening to Joe and my experiences talking to others, what it kind of feels like out there right now. 902-405-6000. It's 902-405-6000. Interesting, no takers on the Tim Houston question. 50% in a new poll, Abacus data poll that was released yesterday, 50% approve of the way that he's handling things here in Nova Scotia. And if there was an election right now in the province, 56% say they would vote PC. Are you happy with the way that Premier Houston is governing Nova Scotia? And it looks like the weather is kind of starting to let up. And I'm always reluctant to criticize school board decisions when it comes to safety, but are you in agreement with what HRCE did this morning and erring on the side of caution and not or canceling school today in light of the weather we're experiencing now and will experience through the day today? 902-405-6000. That's tariffs, markets. It's all on the table. 902-405-6000. We welcome Bill to the program. Bill, how are you?
Not too bad, sir, but I'm awful frustrated with the government.
Okay, what's wrong?
I wonder if there's anybody else out there. What's wrong? Well, okay, here's a challenge for you and your listeners. Have you ever tried to call up somebody in government to talk about business or whatever? Now, I'm going to give you an example.
Sure.
First of all, you start looking in the phone book, say, well, how do I get a hold of somebody in government, local, or anywhere in Canada? You tried looking for a phone number. You know what you're going to get if you can figure it out. I shouldn't tell you where it's at, but I will to save a lot of time. If you look in the phone book, past the yellow pages, there you'll find it Canada. There's one number, I think it is, who I remember. This isn't something new. It's been going for a long time. One number up in Ottawa somewhere, and then you got to go call them, and then they give you the number of somebody local, and then you can play around. And then today I'm trying to get somebody in one department. I ended up getting the phone number of Vancouver. So then they give me another number, supposed to be Nova Scotia. That was in Ottawa. So finally I got Nova Scotia. I'm not getting anywhere when I call them. Everything seems to be on the computer. So I mean, trying to get somebody in government who we pay to hopefully answer the phone. This is sad. Have you tried this to try to get some in
to be honest with you, Bill, I'm sitting here trying to remember the last time that I actually opened a phone book. It's been a very long time. They used to be a mainstay in the newsrooms here. Like, we used to have phone books all over the place. In fact, we used to have a little celebration when the new phone book showed up. Now, I don't even think we have one in the newsroom.
You can't have, for instance, if you say, well, let me see now, I'll look on page so-and-so. They don't have a page number. It's hidden in there, one or two pages. It's not one phone number, basically, Ottawa, and you got to try to spread out from there. Now, Nova Scotia has their phone numbers in there, but Canada, no. So there's something to think about for the folks today, trying to get somebody in government, Thank you, sir.
Have a good one, Bill.
Good man. Thanks.
902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. It's been literally years. In fact, the last iteration that I remember here with the phone book, we were, and this is, I'm not trying to make light of this, but we were using them to boost the monitors up so that you didn't have to stare down when you were working at a desk. I feel for Bill. Like, we get Vanessa's looking up phone numbers almost by the minute. In fact, she's looking one up right now. And I'm the same, but we just immediately gravitate to the Google or whatever we're going to use to do it, right? The actual phone book, I can't remember the last time that I used one. So for somebody that's not computer savvy, then when you're trying to get something done like Bill is, it becomes an impediment, doesn't it? It really does. 902-405-6000. Let's go back to the phones. James, how are you?
Hi, fine, thank you.
When's the last time you used a phone book, James?
I was just listening, yes. I don't know, 20 years ago?
At least, yeah. Anyway, what's on your mind?
Like most people, I do not have a phone book. They don't deliver them anymore. Anyway, Canada 411, whatever. The Houston government, you were requesting
sure.
Comments. He called an early election to re-up his majority, and it worked. So good for him politically. But given that ever since the pandemic, we've all been stuck in this, and that was what they referred to it. We've been stuck in this affordability crisis.
Right.
I think that's an appropriate word.
It is.
And so, where's permanent rent control? Where's significant, deeply affordable housing? It used to be called public housing in the good old days. Mm-hmm. I grew up in a post-World War II thing built for veterans. My dad was in the Air Force. Government can do stuff, but only if they want to. Anyway, I won't babble on, but we've got a real housing crisis. We need dramatic action. I know something was announced about Shannon Park, but it's always kind of pie in the sky rather than boots on the ground.
Yeah, well, the announcements come. The announcements come, and then we wait to see what the reality is, right?
Yes, and it's tough. It's tough at the top, and some things take time, but we just need to see some. Shovels in the ground. I used an inappropriate expression there, but it's, people need hope, and government, and we're lucky to live in Canada. I'm very much an elbows up guy, we're very lucky that government generally doesn't hesitate to take action when there's a social need, but we haven't seen enough what I would call action as opposed to rhetoric.
James, great call. Appreciate it, sir.
Thanks.
Have a great day. 902-405-6000 is the number. 902-405-6000. 50. I got all those zeros in there. I got mixed up. 50% approving of the way that Tim Houston is handling affairs here in Nova Scotia. Are you amongst the 50 to the good or 50 to the bad? Open hour continues after the break. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Holstrand. Back in minutes. All right, 6 or 7 minutes left in the Tuesday edition of the Open Hour. A few open lines if you want to get on. 902-405-6000 is the number. Let's get right to the phones. We welcome Bernie to the show. Bernie, how are you?
Good morning, Dan. Listen, I heard your first two callers there, and
I think they made some very good points. The thing is, what I can't understand with people, we got a federal election on here. We got a conservative leader and a liberal leader that are two fiscal conservatives. And the people in this country got the NDP at 8%. The only ones for the ordinary people that got their back through hard times and in good times. And the people are still going around and they're supporting fiscal conservatives in this time of need in this country. I can't understand the people. 8% for the NDP in the polls is a disgrace on the backs of the ordinary people in this country. It must be the propaganda that got to them that they can't change their minds, because in this day and age, the NDP should be up to about 22, 23%.
It's very interesting, and it was to be quite shocking. Normally, you're right, Bernie, but I think we talked about this before. I think that there's still a lot of disenfranchised people on the center and on the left that are still kind of upset with Jagmeet Singh about his supply and confidence motion.
Well, the thing is look at it. He had 22 seats. The Liberals and Tories had over 300 seats combined. And what did he accomplish in 5 years? He got dental care. He got farmer care. He got the protection for the workers and things like that that affect the ordinary person. I'm talking about the 60% or 70% of the people in this country that got to use a paycheck for a job. They shouldn't be behind the NDP, and it's a disgrace in this country at this day and age that they're only at 8% in the polls.
Bernie, appreciate the call, sir. 902-405-6000. It's 902-405-6000. I know I don't normally read a lot of emails, but got a couple of emails today that I wanted to share along with you. One was response to our question about the school closures today, and it comes to us from Dan. Dan says, "Hi, Dan. Yes, school should have probably had a delayed opening, or teachers should have had to gone in. Now, I know the work sites were open, so I'm not sure if the teachers went in or not today, but I just wanted to make sure that was clear. It's really tough on parents with young kids working outside the home. I'm glad my 3 kids are now out of daycare since the federal government's taking over daycares. They're now all aligned with school closures, so when schools close, which we know can be quite frequent, the daycares close as well. When our kids were in daycare, the daycares often stayed open on school closures, unless the weather was really bad, which was a blessing since my wife and I still had to work. Not sure why they changed this policy, but our elected officials should definitely look into this and possibly change it to the way it was before." That from Dan. And this one very quickly from Ed. It says, "Hello, Dan. Your caller Jim today made some good points regarding the effectiveness of Crown corporations. The primary reason governments opt to create Crown Corps is that they can operate outside the typical bureaucratic processes in which all government departments must adhere to. In practice, not all Crown Corps achieve a desired level of effectiveness, mainly because the legislation creating them doesn't give them structure or authority they need to function. However, a Crown Corp to deliver a national housing program is not unreasonable." Just love to show all the work that you guys do. All the best, from Ed. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000 is the number. The housing, the liberal housing plan certainly has been a topic of discussion here on the program. And I said yesterday that, the government never makes things cheaper and so on and so forth. And our caller earlier today, Jim, said that's just not the case. My experience is, and from a end user perspective of it, is that when the government gets involved, it tends to be a long process, a bureaucratic process, and a lot of red tape involved. So maybe if the model when this thing's fleshed out is along the lines of what Jim was talking about, that this is going to become sort of a realty. So it's not going to be rentals. It's going to be houses for sale, which I really don't know how that all works and what it means to the market and what it means in a market where I think the average home price in Halifax is approaching $600,000 for an average home. How does that work? Is it subsidized? Does it affect the market? There's still a lot of questions, I think, that need to be answered. And I go back to what we were talking about yesterday, and I think I got an email on that that said the same thing, was you can talk about building tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of homes, and even if they are these built in a factory, flat packed, and I'm putting quotes around it, IKEA style homes, somebody's still got to put them up. Somebody's still got to pour the foundation. Somebody's still got to do all that work. And anybody that's in the industry will tell you there's a shortage right now. And if we're going to take those workers off of other jobs to work for the federal government, then what does that do to the housing market? There's just a lot of questions that still need to be answered. 902-405-6000 is the number. We welcome Craig to the show. Craig, how are you?
Not bad, Dan. How are you?
Good. What's on your mind today?
I just wanted to comment. I called in and talked to Vanessa about the email you read that the person had mentioned ever since government was involved with daycares that they close when schools do.
Sure.
From my experience, that's not accurate. I mean, my daughter's 5 years old. She's in Kids and Company, which is a pretty prominent daycare chain around the city, and they receive the subsidy, right? So the rates there are subsidized by the government,
okay.
And they're open when schools are closed, whether it's a snow day, PD day, anything else. So, and a lot of the other daycares I know as well, right? So just because they're subsidized by the government, they're in no ways closed when schools do.
Appreciate it, man.
All right, man. Cheers.
Cheers. 902-405-6000. Squeeze in Ron while we can. Ron, how are you?
Yeah. Hi, good morning. Just real quickly.
Sure.
Earlier, I guess it was last hour, you said that the U.S. put tariffs on everybody except Russia and North Korea. They have sanctions on those countries. They don't do business with them. There's really nothing to tariff.
But they're not on the list, so I'm not inaccurate, am I?
Well, they're not on the list, but
so they didn't put a tariff on it. So I'm not inaccurate.
Well, what would they tariff? There's nothing to tariff.
There's an island with penguins on it that they tariffed. So I mean,
I believe that's part of Australia.
Yeah, well, but still, you get what I'm saying. The optics are awful.
Well, I'm sorry, what?
The optics are awful when two of the aggressor nations on the planet don't make the list. Just saying.
I don't know how you would put a tariff on a country that they've already sanctioned. There's nothing to tariff. There's no trade going back and forth. Where do you put the tariffs?
Well, if maybe they start a trade relationship with Russia. I don't know, but it just.
Well, you're twisting up like a pretzel there on that one. The fact is they don't do trade with them. So what are you going to tariff?
Ron, they've sanctioned 147 countries or something along that. Just weird that they just didn't put it on. That's all I said.
Well, no, but I know, but you're factually incorrect. There's nothing.
Okay, I'll admit it, Ron. I'm an idiot. I'm stupid. Move on. What else are you going to talk about?
That's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
That's not what I'm saying.
What else is on your mind?
Offended because I'm pointing something out.
I'm not offended.
No, that's it.
I just want to move on. I'm up against the break. Let's go.
No, that's it.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay, Ron. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
Okay.
902-405-6000. Maybe I'm inaccurate. And I appreciate you, Ron, for calling and telling me that I am. Be nice if you called when I'm accurate one time, wouldn't it? Anyways, appreciate it, Ron. Appreciate all of you. Appreciate you taking the time out of your day to dial the numbers and join the program. We may not agree, but that's the beauty of the open hour. We're going to stop and take another break. On the other side of it, it's time for Science Files. Dr. Rob Thacker from St. Mary's University will be joining us, and he'll be here to answer all your science-related questions. So if you've got something that's been bothering, here's an opportunity. 902-405-6000. We're back in minutes. All right, welcome back. Hope you're having a fantastic afternoon. I know it's only 5 minutes old, but at least it's a start. It looks like the precipitation outside my window is maybe lighting up a little bit. I'm still seeing bare pavement, at least on the traveled surfaces. So that tends to be my gauge, being that I've been sitting in here since about 7 o'clock this morning. So I've not been outside, and hopefully, by the time I'm done the day, it'll be fairly inconsequential. I can't think of the right word, but anyway, it'll be a safe drive home, let's just say. So the police asking us to pass along to you to just take it easy, give yourself some extra space. Winter driving habits, everybody. It's April, I know, and we don't want to see this anymore. And maybe we can blame science for this. Rob, Dr. Rob is in the studio today, by the way. Can we blame science on these kind of weather events in April? Can I blame the scientists?
So there is a sort of an issue going on that as things start to warm up and the moisture gets in the air, as soon as you have a cold front come through, you can get a lot of precipitation.
Right. Because the storms are getting stronger, right? Mm-hmm. We hear often here when things, this past weekend in the southern United States with the tornadoes and the flooding, and we hear that it used to be once in 100-year storms, and now we're starting to hear...
Oh, we're once in 1,000-year storms now.
And then we're hearing generational size, so like the numbers are changing, because I think it's probably a proven fact that storms are becoming more intense.
Right. I mean, this isn't easy to really have this discussion because people say 1 in 1,000 years of what? And really it's 1 in 1,000 years of the climate the way it used to be.
Right.
Right? Not the way it is now. And so then people go, does that mean we're going to have more 1 in 1,000 storms? And it's like, well, probably, yeah. So, yeah, but the point is, as things start to warm up, then naturally you can have more moisture in the air. And so if you have a cold front come in, then you can have a lot of precipitation from that. So I always say I expect some kind of significant dump of snow in April normally, and like we didn't last year, but quite often we do. And so this is just one example of that.
And we know that some areas in Nova Scotia are in the drought index, and that it's pretty dry out there for some. And these kind of things, I always think, and maybe I'm wrong, but these, I don't know, does the ground have a better ability to soak in this kind of water at this time of the year because it's thawed and it's kind of sitting there and it's melting in?
Yeah.
So it's like that rain, you know, that rain you get when it's just that drizzle, misty kind of, and you walk in and you're just soaked instantly.
Yeah, we need more of that actually. So, but this will actually go into the ground. The ground is not frozen right now. So, I mean, there could be something a long way down that's still a little bit frozen, but this is going to go in and will actually get absorbed reasonably well.
902-405-6000, 902-405-6000. If you have a science-related question, Dr. Rob is here for the next hour to answer them. Headline of the Globe and Mail today says, Russia takes an American astronaut to the International Space Station. Regardless of the geopolitical turmoil in the world, it still seems that at least in that community, in the science community, that we're still kind of sharing assets with Russia, and I will, for the sake of clarity, say that the Russian-American relationship is starting to thaw a little bit. So, but this has been going on since for the last 3 or 4 years, has it not?
I mean, let's be clear. Like, the Russians have been taking Americans up to the ISS for a long time, right? That's not a new thing. I mean, remember that America didn't even have a vehicle to get them up there for a while once the shuttle was shut down, and they were waiting for the new SpaceX and Boeing launch vehicles. So, no, this has been happening for some time, and there was a lot of stuff that has been talked about. I mean, anyone who's seen the documentaries about Chris Hadfield will know a lot of the training that was done in Russia as well. So this isn't anything new. There are international agreements that govern the International Space Station and what happens there. And so this is just an example of that, basically.
Tries to take the politics out of science or space exploration.
I mean, I'd love to be able to say there hasn't been politics about the International Space Station, but there has been, right? And so Roscosmos has made a point of sort of like throwing around when they were going to pull out and so on. There's a lot of things on the space station that are obviously Russian and have finite lifetimes. And so if the Russians were to pull out and stop managing things, that creates significant issues for the space station. But I think pretty much everyone involved now in the International Space Station thinks it's reaching the end of its life, and probably we've got to, well, I mean, people are thinking about the deorbiting plans already, so it won't be up there for much longer.
And that was my next question, is that it's a rather large piece of infrastructure.
Yep.
Is there, or were there plans developed when it was in its plans and its development that one day it's going to be past its prime and you're going to have to do something with it?
See, this is perhaps my own lack of knowledge, right? But I find it really rather remarkable that nowadays, if you want to get a launch license, you've got to have a very clear deorbiting plan for whatever you're putting up there. And this is a fundamental requirement because now we have so many things up there, so many things coming down that people need to know how they're going to come down. But with the International Space Station, I mean, they're literally asking for people for proposals for deorbiting, right? Because they have to control the deorbit. Because otherwise you've got hundreds of tons of stuff coming down uncontrolled, which is unheard of. I mean, that's bigger than Skylab was, right? So there have been a number of requests for proposals. It's pretty much understood what you've got to do. You've literally got to put something on it that pilots it down, right? And then it puts it in either the Pacific or the Atlantic Ocean, right? So they know what they have to do, but actually doing it can be tricky because you don't know what the actual atmospheric density is.
And you can't take it apart?
I don't see there being an appetite for that. I mean, obviously things were put together, but taking it all apart again, I don't see there's going to be an interest in
Or
that.
if it's even possible, right? Because once things sometimes are constructed, they're not designed to
Well,
go
it's
apart.
possible, right? I mean, if they glued things together, for example, then yeah, you probably can't. But I don't honestly know enough about it. But certainly the proposals I've seen are basically about how do we deorbit in a carefully controlled way, and it's literally putting a vehicle on it that controls it and takes it down.
Is there a date circled on a calendar when this thing is going to be
2030 something? So I should know that, but I don't off the top of my head. So, but literally the orbit is a challenge because it decays fairly quickly, right? They used to use the shuttle to boost it. Now I think they're using Soyuz to boost it every now and again. But it's just not a modern space station. It's been up there 30 years. So there is stuff that gets replaced, but a lot of it is 1990s, 1980s technology. And there's other things about to be going on. So,
is there a replacement in the works? Are they going to replace it once this one's done?
So this has been a debate in the international community, and as far as I can tell, there's nothing that's going to replace the International Space Station like the International Space Station. So China is going to have its own. There's talk of commercial space stations coming along, and then the US is moving farther afield, the Lunar Gateway, and has been looking, funnily enough, for international collaborators on the Gateway project for a number of years. And there are the so-called Artemis Accords about the moon and so on. But there's not anything in the pipeline that's going to be quite like the International Space Station has been for the last 30 years.
So there's the potential that there's going to be smaller projects, but more of them instead of just really one.
I think that's what we can expect, yeah. Yeah. So it's a lot of people are sort of like pushing the commercial side of it, and what will we see on that side? I'm in a wait and see mode on that because I'm still not convinced there's an economic argument for it. I'm just not seeing that. And
so the commercial like tourism wouldn't be a thing?
Well, that's the argument, and I'm like, how many people are you actually going to be able to get to do that and still make it cost effective, right? Because it's not like getting on a plane. Getting on that, 1,000,000 to 1. Right, that you're going to become a cropper. Getting on a rocket, it's 100 to 1. Right now, they're trying to improve that to 1,000 to 1, but it's still only a factor of 1,000. Right, you got a further factor of 1,000 if you go to an airplane flight. So I don't think they're going to be able to make a really good inroads into that market. If I'm totally honest, I mean that's not to say there isn't a lot of market money there because we know billionaires hold a lot of the world's wealth. Right, but at the end of the day. How many of them are really going to want to do it?
And what do you do when you're there? Like I get the the going into space and the I guess weightlessness would be a thing, but it's not like you're going to fly up there and you're going to have a 5-star hotel and a restaurant
But that's what they're talking about.
Really?
Yeah. Right. So a lot of the commercial side of people are talking about having space hotels that really do create a luxury experience, and it's not a surprise, right? But I'm still not convinced. I'm really not. So we'll see. I mean, I'm probably going to be 80 or 90 before this really takes off anyway. Haha.
So we'll have a lobby bar and a swimming pool and...
Well, I'd love 2001. Right? So that is, for me, like a truly groundbreaking movie on many levels. But the vision that they have for what it's like of going to a space station, I think, yeah, that's really... really good, right? And I still, to this day, I love that movie. It was so far ahead of its time, it's mind-boggling.
I think my image of what it would be, and we're going to take a break and we'll get to the phones after the other side of the break, it would be something like in Star Trek and Deep Space Nine, where there's some retail and then there's Quark's bar.
I was going to say, you want to go to Quark's, don't you?
Well, I do. And then there's the casino part of it and everything else. But I would imagine that's still a long way
Well, it's not inconceivable that there wouldn't be some kind of casino. I mean, if they do want to do the luxury experience, we all know that casinos tend to be a luxury experience.
Wonders never cease to amaze.
Yep.
We're going to stop, take another break. This is Science Files. He's Dr. Rob Thacker. I'm Dan Olstrand. We're back in minutes. All right, 902-405-6000 is the number. This is Science Files. He's Dr. Rob Thacker from St. Mary's University. He's here to answer do the best job that he can to answer your science-related questions. There's a number of lines open if you want to get on and ask it. This is a perfect opportunity, 902-405-6000, just like Bradley did. Bradley, how are you?
Good, how are you doing today?
Good. Your question for Dr. Thacker, please.
I was wondering, did he hear that the Chinese, or BYD, the electric car company in China. They just came up with a battery that can be charged within 5 minutes to a fully charged.
Okay, I haven't heard a lot about that, but there's been a lot of talk of new battery technologies coming through. I mean, the one thing I would say you will always have to be super careful about is what is the overall battery capacity, right? Because
that brings me to my second question, because they also just signed a deal to create 10,000 new battery swap stations all across China.
Yeah.
So why, if they just have a battery that can be charged within 5 minutes, do they also have battery swap technology where you swap the whole battery within 3 minutes?
Yeah, so I've just been able to Google. So they're saying 250 miles in 5 minutes, which I think is pretty incredible. So, yeah, you're right. But why invest so heavily in battery swap technology if you've got something that you can charge fast enough to get 250 miles in 5 minutes? So, good question. Backup is the obvious sort of answer to that one. But I've read a little bit around battery swapping stations. And the thing that gets me is just it's a challenge to get everyone to agree on standards. And if you have them just for your particular car make, are you really going to be able to get enough of them out there to make it plausible? That's the one question I have, right? So
no, that's why China's biggest battery manufacturer just went and signed a deal with, I think it's 12 new car companies to be able to interchange all of their battery swap.
Right. Okay, yeah.
So when that comes on,
I'm still not convinced. I still genuinely think that although it might take a few years to really have fast charging, because I mean the other thing to remember about is it might be 5 minutes to charge, but it might be at a voltage that is just not commonly available as well. I'd check that, right? So,
okay, that makes sense.
But I don't know. I mean, all of this, especially battery swapping, takes a lot of infrastructure. It's not like really putting a connection in, because you've got to have charging infrastructure there as well. It's not like they just sit there. They have to be charged too. So you've got the same overheads you have with a charging station. And I'm not won over by the battery swapping. I understand. I get the argument. And if everyone agreed to it or agreed on the standards, then yeah, you could make that happen. But personally, I tend to go more for the idea of like more rapid charging being the solution down the road.
Even with the battery deterioration?
Yeah, I'm a bit of a techno-optimist on this one, and I'm not obviously always a techno-optimist, but I genuinely think that once we start seeing really a big supply of sodium solid-state batteries, they will be able to make the charging time short enough. And the other thing is, we have a lot of range anxiety right now, but honestly, I fill up my car once a month, and that's all I need to do. So going from like once a month and having, what's the range? It's about 900 clicks, right? So converting that into miles, that's got to be like 500 miles. So 250 miles is like me charging up twice a month, right? And that's fine by me.
All right, Bradley, appreciate it, sir.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have a good one. 902-405-6000. Now, I would imagine, if my rudimentary knowledge of EVs, that every manufacturer, and I know Bradley was kind of alluding to this, that they're trying to get everybody onto a standard, right? But if North American companies and Chinese companies and different countries' companies will have all different proprietary stuff in there. So you're going to have, like wiper blades. There are 50 different kinds of batteries on hand so that you can swap them. I do like the idea, though, of that we're thinking about swapping batteries. And it's one of the issues that for the last few years that we've taken here is what are you going to do with the battery when it eventually is no good? At least, we're starting to think about, okay, maybe we can swap that. Maybe we can create it, make it easy so that you're not, because that $50,000 number comes out of everybody that I hear that's opposed to EVs is, well, the battery's $50,000 to replace, and And if we can,
yeah, but that's not a fair replacement cost, in my opinion, right?
But it's a significant cost to replace a battery. If we can swap them and it's inexpensive, then that would eliminate that problem.
I mean, for me, it's a bit insane if we can build swappable batteries that the replacement cost is still being charged so high.
Yeah,
right?
no.
It just doesn't make sense, right? So I'm personally still of the belief that is a fundamental part of the business model rather than actually being a true cost to do that. Right?
And trying to get all these manufacturers on the same page would be like
it's a bit crazy to me that what we're seeing now is more and more because of this technological centralization, right? That once one company gets ahead, they tend to want to have the high frontier on the market and keep everyone else out, like total market dominance. Like we're seeing that more and more. And I genuinely have concerns about that because we used to have competition bureaus that would break big companies up, and we're seeing less and less of that now, right? And that's a problem because you don't have efficient markets when you have a single dominant player in the market, right? And people need to think about that. That is a real problem. And I mean, you're just literally seeing with BYD coming along and Tesla sort of like literally running out of the EV market. And I'm like, I don't care who's got the hold of the market. There's a problem when it's just one supplier. Right, so that's a concern for me. Competition is good. Without it, capitalism goes in some very strange directions.
And we do some strange things with competition, particularly in the EV market. And I'm thinking of the tariffs.
The T word.
Well, the T word that we talk about a lot. But putting a tariff on to protect your industry is protectionist at best. And I understand we're trying to foster the industry here in Canada and trying to get battery plants built and start building cars here, but in the global interest, I keep calling it crazy, and it's probably not the right word, but anyway, with tariffs and such on Chinese vehicles, and they're the biggest manufacturer. They're cheaper than the North American vehicles are. I don't know how forthright those companies are going to be to play all in the same sandbox.
Well, and the other really crazy thing about it is if you look at what happens with modern manufacturing, right, more and more you go towards robotic-based manufacturing and you're taking the labor out of it, right? And it's like a dwindling supply. And people always talk about, oh, well, no, we're increasing productivity. People are still doing this and that. But at the same time, generally those jobs don't tend to be the type of truly satisfying jobs that people had 40, 50 years ago. Right, I do this for the cars on the production line, and they were skilled, and they had that job, and that was theirs, and they could feel a sense of pride in it now. I see less and less of that today.
Careful, Rob. You're going down that AI route again.
No. I mean, it's. I mean, human beings have to do something, right? But it's in our nature. No one wants to be and I say this using this word. No one wants to do nothing, as far as I can tell. Like, if you want to do nothing, it's because you've been involved in something that you want to get away from, and it's literally too much, right? Most people who have a good job that they genuinely enjoy, right, want to do that job. Like, if you're lucky to have a job like that, right? I understand a lot of people have the so-called BS jobs, right? David Graeber and all of that. Totally get that. But that is largely, in the view of many economists, a modern development.
902-405-6000, 902-405-6000. Science Files continues after the news. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. He's Dr. Rob. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. All right, welcome back. He's Dr. Rob Thacker from St. Mary's University, and he's here to answer your science-related questions. 902-405-6000, 902-405-6000. Email question, Dr. Rob.
Okay.
And it says, do we need so many things going up into space? And what are the effects to the environment when they all come back down to Earth?
Yep. So, great question. And so, have to be upfront and honest on this. So, do we need so many things going up is a question that will get different answers depending upon who you ask it to, right? And so if you ask anyone who's involved in global communications, they will say yes. Starlink is really the key thing right now. That's what's driving the most number of launches of satellites out of any country or firm whatsoever. They are miles ahead. I think it's something like 2/3 of the satellites that are up there going around the world right now are Starlink. And so do we need it? That's a good question. Could we survive without satellite internet? Probably we could, yep. But nonetheless, there's a market for it, and Starlink is obviously trying to fill that market. So then the question becomes, what's going to be the impact of these things coming down? And that is a very good one that we are only just starting to address. And I'll tell you why this is a challenge. It's really because even though probably on a day-to-day basis we get about, and this might surprise people, but we get about 5,000 tons of space dust coming down onto the atmosphere every day.
Really?
Right? But it's very, very tiny. It's very, very mixed in terms of what material it is. It's all sort of like related to what's left over from the formation of the solar system. And so most of it that comes down is, you don't even see it. It's not even big enough to be a shooting star, right? But what we've got happening now is we've got a lot of concentration of certain elements, like particularly aluminium and things like that, coming down in these Starlink satellites, right? And so that has a number of questions in terms of what's going to happen to all of those metals that are being burnt up in the upper atmosphere. And so that research really, if I'm honest, is only starting right now, right? And so if there are any long-term effects of that, really the clock is starting on the research to figure that out.
Not to mention if the space debris comes into the orbit and it's made out of steel or aluminum, which is now obviously the lightest thing that they can make.
Say it.
British people. And now you ruined my joke.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
And if something made out of aluminum comes into the orbit over the United States, then it has to pay a tariff when it re-enters, right?
Very good. Very good.
See, I'm glad was a long way around to a joke.
I got you off that one.
That you dad joke that you ruined for me. Anyway, this is another email question, Dr. Rob. I promise no more dad jokes. Well, anyway, not as many. Just read that a nuclear battery has been created, and it's something that you won't have to recharge like your laptop or your phone for 50 years. Dan wants to know, have you heard anything about this, and can you elaborate on what it is? That just sounds like it would be scary to carry around something nuclear in your pocket.
So I'm guessing this is based upon radioisotopes. So anything that is radioactive will release energy over time, and then actually using that is something that there's a reasonable amount of technology behind that. So we have what's called, radioisotope thermal generators on things like Curiosity and Perseverance rovers, right? So those have been used for space travel for quite a long time. One of the interesting things is I think they're pretty well shielded, and the particular type of radiation that's chosen isn't too bad, and you can actually control it. Personally, I wouldn't say I'm a big fan of these. There's always issues with control of radio substances, and so I'd like to know what the main argument people are making for them is, right? But again, the technology is fairly mature, right? And it has been around, and it has been used extensively in space travel, right? So it's something that you can think about.
It can't be inexpensive if you're gonna make that into a commercial model, into a laptop or into a phone.
It may not necessarily be too difficult to do. I mean, if you're relying upon a decay process, it's just a question of being able to find the right isotope. And I would suspect that they're deliberately choosing something that is actually reasonably common, right? I mean, there's a lot of very esoteric isotopes that we create for medicine and things like that, but there are some that are more common and we can use. I mean, goodness me, like this is one of the things that gets me about the whole nuclear discussion. I mean, if you're going to be worried about radiation from nuclear stuff, worry about radon in your basement, right? I know we have this discussion every now and again, but seriously, radon in your basement is something that you should
Major
be
problem.
concerned
and
about.
Here particularly.
Yeah.
Because of the makeup of the geology that we're on.
That causes so many cases of lung cancer that we just don't think about it enough, right? So
you said they're shielded. So if I drop my phone, my nuclear battery phone in the bathroom, I'm not going to create a nuclear accident?
So if it's based upon alpha radiation, I mean, you can shield that with paper, basically, right? So those kind of situations. But I mean, I'd have to know what the energy output. Right. I don't honestly know enough about this to actually know. But it'd be fun for me to dig around, and maybe we can have a discussion about it next week.
902-405-6000 is the number. We welcome Tim to the show. Tim, how are you?
Hey, guys. Just a question about gasoline. So for your winter gasoline, they put ethanol in it, and you're supposed to get a little less gas mileage. And winter and summer gasoline, I don't know what the heck they do. But what would happen if they didn't switch over to winter gas in the winter and just use one gasoline all the time.
Does it have to do with the temperature, Dr. Rob, and perhaps the condensation in the tank mixing with the gas? Because I remember back in the old days, Tim, when we had the lawnmower in the backyard, and if you had the old gas that you had left over from last summer and you put it in there, it was this black puff of smoke that would come out of it.
I wasn't going there. I was going with wondering about whether it's because of the density, right?
Okay.
It's a change in temperature.
Sure.
Right? So, but honestly, this is not something I've ever really thought about. And to be honest, it's the first time I've heard about it. So I didn't really know that we actually did change the blend that much. Okay.
Yeah, there's two different blends in the between summer and winter. Good question, Tim. We
Yeah,
stumped them.
you got me. Yeah, well done.
Okay, thanks, guys.
All right, 902-405-6000, 902-405-6000. I know it's in diesel fuel particularly, and because of the reaction that makes a diesel engine work, I'm assuming that's why they have to do it in the wintertime, because of the temperature change.
Yeah.
But I'm not the scientist.
No, this is actually, like I said, I didn't know about that. So I'm curious. I mean, I always sort of look at it and they say measurement gauge to 15C.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, no, I'm not putting this through a 15C. I'm losing out here.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
That has to do with the pumps and all of that
Yeah.
science behind the pumps. 902-405-6000. Dr. Rob, you sent me an interesting article this week that I just couldn't let go without a little bit of discussion on the program today, and it is something that what people research in the world always astounds me. And I think that scientists that write grants applications are very creative people, because somebody apparently is studying monkeys and say that they yodel, as well as people in the Alpine countries in Switzerland. We know that was you, not me.
Yeah.
Anyway, this was fascinating.
Yeah, so this is, and what I should say is, I mean, although they call this yodeling, if you've heard howler monkeys, it doesn't sound like yodeling at all. It sounds like howling. But the point that they're trying to make is yodels are known for the sudden change in pitch.
Right.
Right? And so it turns out that some monkeys actually have not only the vocal cords, they have a vocal membrane, which is much lighter, but can be used to generate sound, and it's just above their vocal cords as well. And so as you change from one to the other, you go from this lower pitch from the vocal cords to this higher pitch from the vocal membrane, and that means that they can change their particular pitch much more faster than a human can. And in fact, we've probably lost those membranes so that our pitch is more stable, so speech is more easy to interpret. And so but your point about someone had to figure out and write a grant on this. So clearly this is about understanding the anatomical structures associated with vocalization, right? And so learning about how monkeys do this, I think, it's actually really interesting. And the way it gets told, of course, though, is like you pull the people in with the yodeling line, and then you talk about the fact that monkeys have this really quite distinctive set of features in their throat for creating voicing, which we as humans don't actually have.
Yodeling. Maybe we'll see a howler monkey on the latest country album to hit the charts. Do they still yodel in country music? I don't think they do anymore.
Ultra yodelers, yes. So
I feel for the scientists that's studying this, because if you've ever been near a howler monkey, it's not the most pleasant of experiences.
No, and so if you do this kind of thing, you really do like doing it. So I know that when my partner was doing research in Africa, she was invited to go to a research station looking at chimpanzees, and she was taken on a couple of the field trips for that, and she didn't really enjoy it very much. You got to see things that were in some cases quite unpleasant, right? Yeah.
902-405-6000. It's 902-405-6000. We're going to stop and take a break. Science Files continues on the other side. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. He's Dr. Rob Thacker, and we are back in a minute. All right, welcome back to Science Files. He's Dr. Rob Thacker. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. We talk about artificial intelligence on this program quite often because it's
kind of unavoidable.
It is unavoidable these days. And very quickly, you mentioned, Rob, that there's a summit coming to St. Mary's in May that's going to address some of the issues with this.
Yeah, so the Atlantic AI Summit is coming May 1st to 3rd, as starting to get a lot of promotion of it on things like LinkedIn and so on. And there's going to be a lot of experts from all across the Atlantic. So there's 5 universities involved. I'm going to forget So DAL, UNB, SMU, Acadia, SaintFX, I'm probably missing some people. So anyway, there's going to be a bunch of research talks. So I'm going to be talking as well. But ironically, talking about the stuff that we tend to talk about on the radio, right? And public perceptions of AI and the public impact of AI, which I think is something that the researchers have to think about as well, because that it's ultimately something that sits at policy. But if you're a researcher, you can think about the technologies you're creating. And I like to poke my colleagues on that a lot of the time. I think there's an element of social responsibility that we sometimes forget a little bit about.
The shiny new thing, right?
Yeah. And so I've given examples. I've actually talked about this on Science Files before, that when I was working at Queen's, I had a colleague developing something that used carbon nanotubes. And so they were potentially going to deploying lots of this stuff into the environment. And I just basically said, look, do you realize we're actually doing research at experimental lake areas on the impact of carbon nanotube pollution on aquatic systems, right? And so we're literally putting all of this stuff into a lake to see what it does. And so they were like, okay, yeah, let me know when you've done it. And I'm like, no, you can think about whether you actually need to do this deployment that you're proposing. So yeah.
The president of the United States is all in on AI. In fact, I was watching a news conference. I don't even know if they're called news conferences. I was watching an event.
No, I think they're called monologues, aren't they?
Well, it's in the Oval Office, and anyway, you're going to get me off on a tangent.
Yeah.
Let's just focus on what the president said. He said that AI is going to be massive in the United States. He said that
we're going to have the biggest AI
that's in the world, and that they are going to create or allow the AI companies to create their own power, because these AI systems require massive amounts of electricity just to function. And Donald Trump said yesterday that America has a lot of, and these are his words and not mine, a beautiful clean coal. Now.
Well, you know how that's an oxymoron.
Well, and I didn't want to say that. I wanted to ask it as a science-related question because, anyway, you know where I'm going with that.
Yeah.
Is or can be with the technology, because the president talks about the technology, it's changing every day. Can coal be, and I'll put quotations around it, a clean energy source?
So this is a hugely controversial topic, right? And I'm not going to even suggest that I have the be-all and end-all on this. But what the issue is if you burn something like coal, you can attempt to bring all of the carbon dioxide that's created and sulfur dioxide and so on, attempt to capture all of that, right? So you have capture technologies that people who develop them will push. And the main concern that there is like, doesn't this just make us do things that we shouldn't be doing, right? It's kind of like not a smart thing to burn coal, right? Because if you've got to build all of these other technologies around them to be able to capture everything, do you really want to be doing that as opposed to moving to something else, such as renewables and whatever? And anyone, yes, I will happily put my hand up and say there are all sorts of recycling issues with renewables. Absolutely, completely true. We need to develop a full circular economy on them. But at least people are trying to do that. With coal, once you burn it, it's gone, right? And so that is the question. And so there is quite a big division within energy generation about whether capture technologies really do solve this to a well enough level to actually be effective or not, right? And there are people on the other side who say, no, this is just stupid. We shouldn't be doing it. We should just move towards more renewables. So can you capture things from coal and make it cleaner? Absolutely, you can. But the question is, should we be doing that?
The president is all in on it as he tries to spur that industry along.
But this is, can I just jump in? This
Sure.
is the thing that's really bugging me about what's happening with AI right now, that the energy requirements for it are so enormous, right, that people are doing calculations suggesting that if you project out to the 2030s, you could be requiring 10%. Initially it was 5%, now they've modified it up to 10% of the power generation is required for AI systems, which is nuts when we're literally trying to move everyone over to electrification, right, to actually start being able to make net zero a real possibility by 2050, right? And so this is a challenge because, I mean, if you're saying, well, 10% by 2030, what are we saying by 2035, 2040, right? And it so easily potentially can eat up a lot of the power that we would like to be converting over to help the electrification that we need to go towards net zero.
And then, of course, my question is if that is the case, if 10% of electricity is going towards AI, and we do continue down the road to electrification, cars, buses, boats, whatever, is there enough outside of burning fossil fuel? Is there enough capacity to support that? Can we generate enough power to support that kind of
the
draw?
bigger issue is that we're going to have to increase our generation capacity anyway.
Right, just to keep up with
and
humans.
So you have the moral quandary of what do we actually pay for, right? Do we pay for the AI or do we pay for the... And people say, well, why can't the private companies do it? It's a lot of investment to build power stations, right? It's billions, right? So most of the time, they, for obvious reasons, have basically power purchase agreements with local utilities, right? Is it possible to integrate? Yes, we're starting to see people talking about doing that and building systems where you literally do have the power generation and so on. I mean, substations have for a long time been part of building data centers, right? And so if we go to the whole power stations, that's an obvious kind of evolution. But it's a massive investment. And as a shareholder, if there's a sudden change in the technology, like DeepSeek comes along and does things a lot more efficiently, you got to think that is not necessarily the kind of easily supportable business, easily to maintain over the long term. Whereas something like power supply, there is a demand for that and it's constant, right? So that you can support, right? So I'm not convinced that the business model, whether this is really going to work. I mean, I'm sure someone out there has a better model than that and says, we can make it work on these grounds and so on. But it's really a problem when we're trying to get everything over to electrification to move towards to net zero. I really struggle with that.
My concern is, we haven't come up with a good solution for things to create the power with. Burning fossil fuels is probably the cheapest way to do it. Well,
that's why they're talking about it,
right? And that's a finite supply, right?
Yep.
Regardless what the president of the United States says, that they have more energy than anybody else in the world. They probably do. It's in the ground, but that eventually
left in the ground,
and it's eventually going. It's never ending. Like it will end. There's an end to that. But my concern is that if we continue down the road of allowing big data companies to create their own power plants to power their AI systems or whatever they're powering, their plants, their car plant, whatever it is, then that finite supply, the pie starts to shrink, right?
Yep.
So, the humans outside of that still need electricity. The power plants that are generating, but they're using that raw material to generate the power. And to this point, so are we. So are we going to pit one against the other?
So where it becomes unstable is when the AI companies have significantly more resources than the utility companies do. Right, that's when it's unstable, because then what are they going to do when it's a question of we want to buy power, right? They can buy it, right, because they have the backing to do it. And that's not stable, right? So I worry about that significantly, right? Especially when this is one of the things as well, like people are really going to not like what I'm about to say. But the cost of electrification is so high that taxpayers are going to have to pay the bill. Right, and this is something that we don't talk about, and we should be talking about, because Nova Scotia, we have Nova Scotia Power, and all the concerns people have about how that's run and so on. At the end of the day, Nova Scotia Power does not have enough money to deal with reconductoring or building new power infrastructure in this province. We're going to have to pay for that. I mean, we already pay for provincial interconnects. People know that the government's paying for that, but we're going to have to pay for that as well, right? And that's going to be a difficult discussion. Right, because many of us are unhappy with Nova Scotia Power and the power rates that we pay. Although I would say, goodness me, look at the prices that they pay in Alberta, right? And look at the prices they pay in Texas. So don't. It's actually not too bad, although it's not as good as in Ontario. Yeah, absolutely, totally get it, or Quebec for that matter. But seriously, this is a difficult discussion when we're going to have taxpayers paying for important stuff. And AI companies are coming in and doing things with a lot of money behind them.
And with that happy sentiment, we end this edition of Science Files. Thank you to Dr. Rob Thacker. Thank you to all of our guests. Thank you to Vanessa Veinotte on the other side of the glass. And most importantly, thank you to all of you for spending some time with us today, dialing the numbers, joining the conversation. You make my day when you do it. Have a fantastic day, everybody. Make sure you're safe out there. The roads are still a little slick. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Until then, take care of yourself and remember, be kind to one another.